I grew up in Czech Republic. Czech Republic is an atheistic country, if anybody knows. And it's interesting because Czech Republic is atheistic. Moravia is Protestant. Slovak Republic, you remember Czechoslovakia, yeah? So at some point we were together. Slovakia is Catholic. And then Ukraine, the next, which doesn't belong to us but still is Orthodox. But I'm in this atheistic part of the world. I had no idea about Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, anything. Just nothing. Can you imagine you have a church in the middle of the town and it means nothing to you? Totally nothing. That's just a building in the middle of the town with a steeple on and probably a lot of maintenance. That's why I don't like traditional churches buildings, because it needs too much maintenance and you need to maintain the community rather than the buildings. But you know the story about maintenance. But anyway. But it so happened, and I'm not sharing with you the whole story, I was not happy atheist. I love nature, and going to nature meant I had many questions. Like at school they would always say about this evolution, which I didn't understand anyway at the time, but so I had many questions which didn't make sense. The answers didn't make sense to me. And so when I was 12 and I lost my granddad, who was dad to me, I started to have more questions. And without delaying it, I became Buddhist. I started yoga, and I really wanted to become monk and go to Tibet. Or you would say Tibet? Tibet, good. Yeah. And then after a while, I was swept by the success stories, and I wanted to have a business, which was a funny idea for me. It didn't work, but things didn't work, really didn't work, and some of the relationships I had didn't work either. And after 2 years, I was so empty and so desperate that I went to my Buddhist kind of meditations. And it was then when God spoke to me. Now what happened is I was sitting there trying to empty my mind when this simple idea, and it was not voice, it was idea. You have read many books, but you haven't read the Bible. And I was like, yeah. But my mom always said, and I have a great mom, she would always say, I will support you in anything you plan to do in your life. Just don't become a believer. The word used was believer. I didn't know what it means, believer. It has never been explained to me what it means to be believer. Only later I learned that my stepfather was a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't know until he left when I was 17-ish. And so I had this controversy in me. I have never read the Bible, true, but also never be believer. I spoke to my mom, said, I could just read the book, couldn't I? And she said, because she had no idea about it either, she just had the little experience with my stepfather, which was not good experience. And so I bought the Bible, read Genesis, read Exodus. That's still okay, isn't it? It's still stories. I can handle stories, yeah? But when it was Leviticus, and you end up with all these, and I stopped reading it. I got one letter from my friend inviting me for Net 98, Dwight Nelson. I got this letter, read it, about sweet Jesus, how she found him. She was my yoga friend. And when I read it, I crushed it and I threw it away. I couldn't handle sweet Jesus. As a man, I just you know, in the letter, it sounded to me like sweet Jesus. I don't know what that's about. And I threw it away. But the day Dwight Nelson started his presentations, we had birthday party. Just 3 people. Birthday party, well, that's not... You can have a birthday party even in 2, but we were 3. And my business partner was there this time. And she said, "You are not happy these days, are you?" I said, "Yeah, a bit searching, and you know." And she said, "Well, tonight, you will go with me." You didn't tell me what it is. This is how you invite for things, yeah? No, really. You need to do that. When we have good friends, we can do this. We just say, "Tonight you are going with me." "Oh, I can't," or whatever. "Well, cancel it and you come with me." We sometimes have to be a bit more firm, you know. There are things which are more important than there will be always something. So she said, "You will come with me." She didn't ask me. She said, "You will come with me." And I said, "Okay, I will." Yeah, why not? I was quite open, young man, 20. And so I went. It was the same thing. Dwight Nelson at 98. And the lady that invited me didn't come. But the lady that sent the letter, are you with me? And so she thought, "Oh, you can." And she praised God even more when she knew the story. And then, basically the 5th presentation was on creation-evolution debate. And when Dwight Nelson spoke and presented, I was convinced. Because for years I had a debate with my mom. It was my mom who gave me all these questions, you know, how can this all work? And, you know, it was her in the lounge asking me, you know, once in a while she would have this theological, philosophical, whatever question. And I would try to find answers for her. But when Dwight Nelson spoke, it was like, come. But for you, creation may not be a new idea, but for me, there is an intelligent being that created it all. And that's why it's so well designed. I know that it's not so, the design is not so well now, but still, it's so well designed. It just clicked. There was an altar call who would like to give it, and I was like, yes, I've actually followed this in my mind for some years. Buddhism is different. Buddhism doesn't have answers for these, and they have very different ideas about matter altogether. That's enough of my little story that God has given me. And that's why creation-evolution debate has always been close to my heart. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but it's my passion. So I always share as much as I can, but there are also questions which people may ask or say, and I may not be able to follow. And that's fine too. I'm quite happy there. So, okay. Many times we speak about the origin of matter? No? We speak about origin of life. No? We speak about origin of what? Earth? Of species. Because of Darwin. He only taught about the origin of species. The origin of life, better not to go there. The origin of matter, don't touch it. But today I will do with you the origin of matter and the origin of life. Because there is so much debate on origin of species. Yeah? Do I make sense? So, origin of species, did they evolve? Is one question. How it all evolved? Could it evolve? The origin of the first life. How could from non-living matter suddenly become something living? That's a huge jump. That's what we will do this afternoon. And this morning, much more fundamental question. We don't even need to go there, to those other two. The origin of matter. And that's what we will do this morning. Right. So I have this gentleman here. Oh, I have today. Nobody can read it, but this gentleman is called Michio Kaku. Nice name. He is a physicist. And many times he says basically, many times people ask the physicist, what is there for me? Will my broadband be faster? Or, kind of practical question. All this research in physics, does it have any meaning or practical implication for me? Well, he says it may do, but that's just like a side effect. He says spin off. We do this because we want to understand our role and our place in the universe. And I would hope that this morning that somebody would be helped that way. To understand our role and place in the universe because of understanding of the origins. Anybody at the university here? Anybody studying? Wow. Guys, yeah, you see, you're all clever, but I know. We always go to uni and we go back home and we only learn how little we know, so it's like you feel like we're being cheated, but at least that's a good start to know how little we know. But, what did I want to say? I don't know now. So students, love it. Yeah, I know what I mean. You are challenged, wherever you are, on evolution. Evolution is taught everywhere, from these young boys up to uni and everywhere. So we need to be equipped to be able to be engaged in the conversation. And let me just say this, because this is not in the material, but I will say a little bit on the worldview. When I say worldview, it's basically what it means is that everybody has some beliefs. And because of those beliefs, they explain the data, the facts in a particular way. Does it make sense? Yeah, everybody knows this kind of concepts. So everybody has beliefs, and so they explain what they see in a particular way. And so we all need to acknowledge that the data is there. We have the facts about nature and all that. But the way we explain it is determined by our beliefs. Now, every scientist, but also every Christian, has some beliefs that allow him to explain the data in a particular way. But we need to be able to say, I'm explaining it this way because of my faith and beliefs. But also, and let me say this, Darwin always said, for me, the best explanation of the data I see is this. It means that he would not say, I have the evidence for it. He would just say, the best explanation for me is this. Now for me, as a young man, 15, 16, 17, 18, the best explanation for it was something else than evolution. By the way, Darwin struggled too with his own explanation that everything happened by gradual development. So we as Christians, when we can engage on this level with people, I believe we can help others, and sometimes we can help us too. Because we can quite clearly say, look, I see the same data as you do, but when I see that, the best explanation for me cannot be that it all happened by chance. And I'm making the leap of faith there, but I'm still staying rational too. Rational, and I'm not touching the Bible yet. I'm just saying rational. For me to be rational, I need to explain it in a particular way. When I see the design, I see a creator. But today we are forced to believe, and Richard Dawkins is very clear on that, and he's not the best representative of science as such, but we have evidence, they will say. We have the evidence for evolution. Not true at all. When he tests these, no, you will go to his beliefs. And that's naturalism, which has one single belief. There is only that which is natural, material. That's all there is. How do you know that? We don't know. There is no evidence that only what we see or can reach exists. We don't know whether there is beyond natural, supernatural. We cannot know. How could we know when we are limited by natural already? But they make this faith-belief statement which cannot be today touched. You must comply. And even lose a job if you don't. Anyway. So that's the Richard Dawkins thing. But we need to be able to engage on this level with people, especially at universities and with our friends, and help them to see that they also believe. Not just we have to believe. All right, quick. So what is the next slide? Today's questions. So what is the origin of all matter, which the universe, life, and all that is made of? Where did laws of physics that govern matter come from? What is the origin of matter needed for the Big Bang itself? Has matter always existed, or does it have a beginning? Does the Big Bang theory best explain the origin of matter? Or rather, does the observed evidence point to an intelligent designer as the best explanation? Okay, I don't know how well I do that all. But what's the origin of matter? Tell me. What are the options? Speak to me. I know you will say God created it, so what are the other options? What's the origin of matter? How will you explain it without God?
Well, not that is my belief, but some say it was always there.
Excellent. Excellent. It was always there. You don't need to explain it then. It has always been there, although you still need to ask how come. Yeah? But it has always been there is a very much used argument. But it doesn't fully answer the origin anyway. Anybody else?
The Big Bang Theory.
The Big Bang Theory, okay. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We will look at that later. Anybody else? This is one of them too. Yeah? Matter came into being by itself because it's simple. Have you heard that one? It's so simple. Just little balls, atoms, just little balls, like, there's nothing about it. Probably filled with air or something like that. Yeah? And there was a time when that was believed. So, that one, matter has always been there, matter was designed, created. So we have that. 3 options. I will look at these 3 quickly with you. The first one, is matter simple or complex? Okay, not complex, but something simple. This is the man, Democritus. He said, before Christ, in times of Medo-Persia, he said that this is the first scientist that used the word atom, which means in Greek indivisible. Yeah? So he didn't see atoms, but he knew there must be the matter, all the matter must be made of something like these particles which are indivisible. Cannot be divided. Is that true? Now we know it's not. That's what he found. So let's look at some of the atoms. They say this is real picture, so you can enjoy hydrogen, iron, yeah, on copper plate. The colors are not real. Yeah, but real atoms. This is again hydrogen atom. Shows the atom's electron orbital. And of course they are just imaging the rays that it produces. Yeah? So that's atoms. And this is exactly where we will not go. It's chemistry. When you start mixing atoms, you go into chemistry and you start playing with it. I have no idea about chemistry. I need to do that later. We will just talk about physics today. Yeah? So next time we will do the origin of molecules. But I have no idea. So, but this is what it looks like when atoms come together. They have they have reactions between themselves. And also very interesting. And I just mentioned, yeah, physics, chemistry, where we will go and not go. So what is atom made of? Who is doing physics here? I hope nobody. If somebody would be checking on me, then would start correcting me. Oh, good. Nobody does chemistry? With me? Oh, good. I mean, this is basics, isn't it? You did a little bit, yeah? Chemistry. No, okay. So we have the protons, red ones. We have the neutrons, the grey ones. And around it are electrons. Everybody is on the same page, yeah? We learned this at school. And of course, protons, red ones, and neutrons, they create nucleus. And that's firmly packed, and the electrons are working around it, yeah? So that's that. So I'm doing well today. Yeah? This is another picture of the same. Now, we have different, they call it elements. And you know this table of all the elements. How many do we have? I don't want to make you feel like a school. I didn't know before I found out, but about 98 elements. How do you make one element into another element? You change how you make from gold, no, how you make from iron gold. When you add a few protons and electrons. No, serious. Yeah, that's how it is. It's not easy to do, so that's why they still mine for it. It's cheaper. So we have 98. Now, each element has certain number of protons. From 1, do I have it here as an example? Yes, I do. From 1, for hydrogen, it's got only 1 proton and 1 electron. That's hydrogen. All that is. No neutron. That's one of the elements. Now, I go to the next one. We add proton, and we add electron, and we've got helium. And then we go on and on and on and on. Why am I doing this? I'm doing it because I'm trying to show you how simple matter is. And this is just beginning. I'm trying to just refresh our memories. Now it starts working. Yeah? But when we add 79 electrons and 79 protons, we have gold. So that's it. And then we add even more. This is the heaviest element naturally occurring in nature. It's got 98 protons and 98 electrons. Now you know the story, yeah? And it's got a certain number of protons, neutrons. So this is the heaviest, it's called californium. People also managed to synthesize some other elements. Maximum proton number is 118. Yeah? And that's yeah, all these are synthesized. What does it mean? They were not found in nature, but we managed to make them. But later, in many of these, we found out that they are in nature, but they are not stable enough to stay there for too long. Yeah? So, but these are synthesized. The heaviest is this, you pronounce it, yeah? I go for UUO. UUO. Sounds good, doesn't it? So this is the heaviest synthesized element, and it doesn't last too long. Now we will share why you cannot have heavier element. Why we cannot have heavier? Well, later we will mention that. So, okay. So now we know atom, protons, neutrons, electrons running around it. We know that. But over the last few decades, we somehow learned it's more complicated. And so let me be very humble here, entering this space. And I can I use this? Oh, it doesn't work on it. So you see but if I do this. This is called quarks. They are smaller than protons and neutrons. Each proton has 3, and each neutron has 3. And they are so combined that, are you following me? Yeah? They are so combined, these quarks, so that proton is positively charged, neutron has no charge. Don't ask me any more questions, yeah? This is how far I can go. But quarks are further particles found in protons and neutrons. I would like to explain it more. Now, second one, we've got this. They are called leptons. And don't worry, I don't understand it, so I will save you from the explanation. But one thing I know, the top left one is electron. And then there are others. We know electrons very well, but then there are others which change into each other. And they go through things. By the way, the guy who found out died last month. Leon Lederman. Anybody knows him? I listened to BBC4 day before I was presenting this in Carlisle. So it was very interesting to hear about Leon Lederman. And if you find him on YouTube, he's a very good presenter. He makes a lot of fun. And he will also teach you too. So, he found a muon. How they did it? Well, they had a big steel 20-meter plate of steel basically, and they smashed atoms against it, and they found out that these muons run right through it on the other side. So they could measure them. But they themselves don't know much about it, so why should I? But they are there, they say. And these leptons change into one another somehow as needed. You see, I can't tell you much more. Yeah, it flies through the universe, goes through things, and so on and so on. But here we have bosons. It's exciting, isn't it? I can see, how excited you look. So I will do the same. But these bosons are responsible for the 4 forces we know of. Teach me now. What are the 4 main forces in the universe? I don't know the other ones anyway. But gravity, thank you. Gravity, well, we will learn about it. And this is starting to be amazing. Let's go for it. These four forces are gravity, electromagnetism, you can't see that, but it's a strong force and weak force. Take them away, everything is gone. Nothing exists. So let's have a look at them. Electromagnetic force. I had magnets last time, I forgot them at home. But I want to buy some powerful magnets. You know. But the electromagnetic force. So that I don't. Okay. Yes. Here we go. So, the particle that creates electromagnetism is called photon. Oh, that's not new, is it? It's photon. Photon is the particle that provides electromagnetic force. Now, it's useful because our planet has an electromagnetic field which is protecting us from the sun. That's clear too? You might also know about electromagnetic force because of this. They call it northern light. Yeah, am I correct? Okay. So it's created by the electromagnetic force. What it's doing? It's basically holding the proton and electron. Sorry, it's holding the atom together. How I know? There are protons in the middle, in the nucleus, and the electron rounding around it. They attract each other, and so they hold together. Atom is held together by electromagnetic force. If it's not there, you've got everything and anything flying all over the place. Yeah? Right. Well, what it also does, maybe there will be another picture. In the nucleus, you have protons, which are positively charged. Positively charged protons do what? They repel. You see, there is a picture there. They repel. The protons repel one another. But listen, when you take atom, and you've got two protons in the nucleus, and they repel each other, how come they stay together? That's the question. Why are we doing this? We are doing it because we want to explain how simple matter is. Yeah? Is it simple? Well, so, isn't it? So they repel. Do you know what's the power, the force at which it repels? Imagine you put two protons together. Now, imagine they are very small. We are talking really small particles. What's the strength they repel each other? Just do some guessing. In kilos. And say 1,000. No, they are small, so we need to be reasonable. 10 kilos. These two little protons repel at 10 kilos. When I had the magnets, I was showing children how the magnets repel. And children cannot generally hold it because it's so strong. Yeah? The same is happening in each atom. If they were not held together, these protons, they would shoot at a speed of 8,000 miles per second in all directions. Now imagine you have a gold with 79 protons in the nucleus. How come then it is held together? Who knows the answer? I will tell you that. this. God, well, that's what I believe, had to add one ingredient, and it's called strong nuclear force. Strong nuclear force is over 100 times more powerful than electromagnetism. And so it manages to hold the nucleus together. And now we are coming to the answer to the question why we cannot have heavier elements than 98 protons in the nucleus. Are you with me? If we have more, the strong nuclear force is not capable of holding it together. It just disintegrates. Amazing? So, the strong force, the particle that holds it together is called muson. I don't know if I put it there, but you don't need to care anyway. Yeah, it's not there. But listen now, the same is happening. Proton is here, and in the proton is what? 3 quarks. And they also have in it 2 positively charged particles, which repel. So even inside there is a particle which is called gluon. That's the next one. And the gluon is holding quarks together in the proton. Exciting? Just before you fall asleep. You need to open more windows, I don't know. I'm getting really hot. Because of my brain, you know, it started to work. And so, why are we doing this? To be amazed by God. Yeah? At least I do. Okay, now it becomes easier. The weak nuclear force, I can't explain. Despite strong force holds it together, there is also weak force that somehow allows not to hold it as tight. And sometimes these particles can change as need be. Do you understand it? I don't. Yeah, I tried to listen to this so many times and I just don't figure out how this works. But there is another force that is called weak force, which allows something which is also needed. Okay, that's fine. We can move on to gravitational force, which I understand very well. As you do. Because if you didn't, you would be flying in the air, but you are sitting. Maybe you should stand up and do a bit of exercise, really. But strong force works at small distances. It only holds everything together in the atom at, they call it femtometers. Femto, I don't know how many zeros there is. I can see that somebody understands it, but there are many zeros. So when these particles are very close, they are held together by the strong nuclear force. Perfect. But once you take them apart, it doesn't work. Gravitational force, on the other hand, is working at huge distances. What it actually does, it says that any objects in the universe attract each other. Bigger they are, bigger the force. Every object attracts any other object in the universe. And so, gravitational force is different. We are unable to create something like that. That you would have something that repels and attracts and even more holds it together, but then at the same time holds it together as a whole. Do you know how scientists are confused now? By the way, look at this. Yeah? This is the sun lying around the galaxy. And we are, you know, the Earth, we are trying to catch up. Yeah? Do you feel it? Do you feel it? Just if you are quiet. Do you feel how we fly? Do you feel the speed? Or the wind? Amazing, isn't it? And I don't even know the speed. You can YouTube it. So there's gravitational force. This gentleman says, most gravity has no known origin. It is some exotic particle. Nobody knows. They call it graviton, but they don't know whether it exists. What is gravity? Nobody knows. But it works. Good. Now, what's the other one? Lisa Randall says, the standard model of particle physics describes forces and particles very well. But when you throw gravity into the equation, it all falls apart. You have to patch the figures to make it work. You've got basically too many forces that do different things, but how it all works is just so difficult to calculate. We don't know why it works. And so you go to Wikipedia and you look at list of unresolved problems in physics. By the way, when you look at the list of problems in physics, you almost ask yourselves, so what we know? The list is unending. Okay. I don't know if you can explain it. But when I became a Christian, it said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's it. Or sentence like, and he created stars also. Is it complicated explanation? Well, evidently God doesn't want to even bother us with explaining it. He wants us to find out ourselves, and to be puzzled. But that's what we believe. That's what I believe. And it makes all the sense to me. The word create in the Bible is word bara. Or bara. Bara. God, bara, creates. We, asa, we make. What's the difference? Well, God creates bara from nothing. We make asa from what God bara created. That's the difference. That's why you will not find in the Bible man bara, never. Only God created. Scientists sometimes say, oh, we can create matter now. They're trying in Switzerland, don't they, in the Hadron Collider. And they may succeed. Make a little bit of matter in 10 decades, maybe. So scientists say to God, we now know how to make matter. And God says, oh, that's interesting. Okay, show me that. And so they take a bit of soil and start doing something with it. And he says, God says, just hang on. What are you doing there? Well, we want to show you how we make matter. Okay, well, then get your own dough. So that's the difference. That's what we said. Okay. Scientific story about it. When I'm thinking about the time, I see how unsuccessful I am. Okay, what is the scientific answer? I like this man. I like his struggle because we all struggle to sometimes explain things. But he chose the more difficult path, in my view, to explain everything. He's a biologist, so he's not touching physics. But in his summary to one of the chapters about God's existence, this is Dawkins' summary in his God Delusion book. Now, please, sometimes people see these books as a threat to faith. And sometimes people even don't read it because they are afraid, oh, this could actually maybe even attack my faith. Unfortunately, it didn't to me. Fortunately. But it didn't. It actually confirmed it. It was like you are waiting for the moment when Richard Dawkins will say the sentence, the final verdict. And you will say, he makes a lot of sense. And the moment never comes. He says in his summary, design in nature is the greatest challenge. Let's be honest, yeah? And he's honest about it. 2, resist the temptation to attribute it to God. It is false. Okay? Doesn't make any... He speaks straight. 3, why? Because God must be more complex than the design in nature. And so the God explanation presents even larger question. So who designed the designer? And that's the end of the argument. That's the end of the discussion. And I was still waiting, for the argument. But this is it. This is the argument. Now, what Christians say? Christians say God has always existed. Do we understand it? No. But that's what God says. Do we have a way to prove it? No. Well, there are things we cannot prove, We cannot go to the beginning and, see how God was making Adam. But that's what we believe. He has always existed. He has no beginning. That's the answer. But Richard Dawkins is not happy with that answer. So, anyway. Number 4, we can now safely say, because of the argument number 3, we can now safely say that the illusion of design, I like the word, illusion. I am illuded, or the illusion of design in living creatures is just that, an illusion. He uses so many words of this kind. I mean, it's like end of discussion, All right, it's an illusion, and he will not prove that it's an illusion. So anyway, 5, and this is where we come to physics. We don't yet have an equivalent explanation. When he says crane, he means explanation for physics. He's honest, yeah? Some kind of multiverse theory could, in principle, do for physics the same explanatory work as Darwinism does for biology. We have no explanation for physics, basically, for matter. And this kind of explanation is superficially less satisfying the multiverse theory. Do you know what is that? There is a machine that is throwing out universes. Just like that, multiverse theory. And because you need the right universe for life, it's throwing many of these. And after billions of years, it actually threw out the right one. And you live in it. Enjoy. Yeah? So that's multiverse theory. And he says this kind of explanation is superficially less satisfying than the biological version of Darwinism because it makes heavier demands on luck. But the and so on. So we have nothing for physics. Number 6, this is summary of this main chapter on God. We should not give up hope of a better explanation arising in physics, something as powerful as Darwinism is for biology. What we have at present is self-evidently better than the self-defeating hypothesis of an intelligent designer. Do you know what it means, self-evidently? You look at it, and it's clear. You look at nature, and clearly God's hypothesis cannot be the answer. Self-evidently. And we have to say, that's fine, we love you. I can't share it. I don't see the self-evidence in it. Yeah, because self-evidently I became Christian. I was observing and I couldn't handle Richard's explanation. I don't know how these children managed to sit for so long. I wouldn't. Matter always exists. So this is the explanation. Matter has always existed. The second one, the Big Bang bounds, expanding, shrinking universe. Okay. Okay. So I will just touch it. Matter always existed. Richard Dawkins, for him, how he explains that? The big bounds. What it means? He believes, basically, that the universe is Big Bang, expanding, and then shrinking again. And expanding and shrinking again. Big bounds, it's called. And that's how he says, basically, matter has always existed. Which doesn't answer the question. Because we have just given the same answer for God. You remember?
Yeah.
God has always existed. Richard says, matter has always existed. So you have choice between two gods. One is a living God, who made it all, and always existed. The other God is called matter, which has always existed, and produced everything there is. These are the two competing worldviews you have to decide one of them to accept. So, Richard Dawkins' argument is self-defeating. He wants us to answer, what's the origin of God? Where he came from? We said he always existed. But he cannot produce answer for his own explanation. So where did matter come from? Well, it has always existed. Good job. That matter always existed. And you have to really make your choice. So, okay. I covered that. We covered multiverse. The question is, where is this machine throwing out universes coming from? Please don't ask that question. It's not allowed. Yeah? It's only providing explanation. You are not going to origins, where this machine come from. But this is a machine producing universes. Where did it all come from? It's fine, maybe it always existed. Yeah? But these explanations really confuse everything and become so complex and big and that you can't believe it. You need a lot of faith to believe it. Superficially less satisfying, he said. Heavy demand on life. True. Very true. So, who designed the designer? Always existed. We said all that. And now the Big Bang Theory. And I'm finishing. The Big Bang Theory. Do I have any interest in it? Okay. What does it say? At the beginning, you had many particles. Positively charged and negatively. And they somehow, the positive ones and negative ones, it's called matter and antimatter. Matter and antimatter. When matter and antimatter meets, what happens? It's all gone. But every billionth clash, there was one missing antimatter particle. And so the particle of matter survived. And that's our universe. Every billionth particle of matter did not find antimatter found. Does it answer our question of the origin of matter? In my view, it doesn't, because where all the matter and antimatter came from, and the billionth particle which didn't have antimatter came from, is not answered. Is it answer to the origins? No. So even the Big Bang theory is not an answer to the question of the origin of matter. At least that's how I see it. And we covered that. Well, actually, I could show you all this here. So matter, antimatter, and every billionth. I can only conclude that you have the choice. Who design? So, what is the origin of matter? Oh, I know, confused. I can only conclude exactly what it says there. There is no out-of-nothing theory to explain the origin of matter. Oh, that's good, yeah. All the theories we presented, none of them answers out-of-nothing theory. It's always from something. Multiverse, throwing universes into space, needs the machine, which is not explained. Matter, antimatter, all this, the Big Bang theory, it's not a theory to explain matter coming from nothing. It's only the word bara that provides the only rational explanation. And so the choice now rests with you to share with those who think that matter is simple, or those who think that matter always existed, because they may then choose rather God, living God, who always existed. And you should all get a sweet now for managing a whole hour. Oh God, thank you. So shall we just pray, bow our heads, and then conclude? Father, we talk